Hey guys, hope you're doing well, it's Max here. In this video tutorial I would like to explore with you a Voronoi Fractal node in Substance Designer. In my opinion, it's one of the most powerful nodes when it comes to surface generation. Be it organic, hard surface, geometric, the list goes on. And in the first part of the video we will deep dive into the node itself and check out all the settings it's got to offer. And in the second part of the video, I'll show you a series of specific examples of what can be achieved with Voronoi Fractal. So yeah, hopefully by the end of the video you'll fall in love with this node just like I did. Okay, so let's have a look at the Voronoi Fractal node and see what can be done with it. So there are two types actually. Simple Voronoi and Voronoi Fractal. We're gonna select Voronoi Fractal because it's much more complex, and we're going to go through all the sliders and see briefly what can be done with it, right? And then after that we will just go into the more specific examples of what can be achieved with this node. So as I said, it's super powerful. And I'm super excited to show it to you. So let's take a look. It's got quite a lot of sliders here. So we'll go through it now. The first one will be, by the way, I set the intensity of my normal map to 20. So we can see a bit better what's going on here in 2D view. By default, as you can see, it's kind of like a cellular noise. Was kind of like a grain type of stuff, but you can change that later on. Let's just go with this one. So first one is gonna be invert. Pretty standard stuff. You just invert grayscale. After that, we have scale. As well, very simple. We can change our scale of the noise, and we can also change the size in horizontal, vertical manner, selecting separate axes like X, Y, Z. See, so we can stretch this texture as we want. Go like that. The same can be done with the offset. Vertical, horizontal, and disorder, right? Pretty standard styles, so pretty standard stuff for the noises in Designer. Then we're moving to distortion intensity, which is it's gonna basically warp this this shape. And we can also increase or decrease the scale of the noise. So I'm guessing it's using probably parallel noise to do the warping. So we're basically increasing the scale of the parallel noise. So that's for distortion. The next option is pretty cool. Minimum level and maximum level. If you hover your mouse over a minimum level and just hold for a bit, you have this pop-up window that explains to you what this function does. It's pretty handy, let's say. So you have in here the minimum level of repetition used in the fractal pattern. Okay, so as you can see, for example, I start to here, let's zoom in a bit. If I start to increase the minimum level, you have a higher frequencies of the cells, right? And if I crank it up to 4, it becomes the cells themselves. They become pretty much identical in their size. However, if I drop it, you see it starts to introduce cells that are let's say, less frequent. Sorry, let's go back. Yeah, so it does become, basically, you have more variety. You have more variety of sizes here, and this is the maximum level as well. So if I lower it down to 0, you see we're left with larger cells, which are quite uniform in their size. There's not much variety, but as soon as I start to move it up, the slider introduces higher frequency. So you can play with these options a lot to change the look of the shapes completely. I pretty much used it a lot. I'll show you later, which will give you so many possibilities of generating a lot of interesting looking shapes. And then after that we have roughness, which is, it's not your typical roughness where you see like, how the light reflects off the surface. In this case, it's like controls the balance between low and high levels of repetition. So if I move it back, you see it kind of it's controlling like a transition of the higher frequencies with the low frequencies of the cells. Right. So by default it's 0.5. So let's keep it that way. Next up is it's got an interesting name. I don't know how to pronounce that. I guess it's lacunarity. So it controls how the applied fractal pattern fills space. So the higher value results in less gaps in the pattern and a denser noise. Right. So talking about density of the noise, you see if when I'm moving the slider, how dense and noisy the textures becomes. So if you wanna, generate something like a grain type of texture, that can come in pretty handy. Then we have a global opacity. This is just I'll control the intensity. Basically, you see the normal map becomes less intense with the opacity. So then we have a rounded curve, which is rounds the slope around each point of the noise. Kind of like an inflation effect, in this shape, I don't know if it will be visible that much in here, but you see on this cube on the right, it kind of becomes more blobby, more rounded overall, the shapes. Softer look, I would say, Then we have a distance scale, which is also pretty powerful. Slide, adjust the distance of the gradient around each point. You can create like individual islands of the shapes with that. Let me see. Yeah. See how when I lower it, creates those cool looking islands with the texture. So that's really cool. Then we have different distant modes. It's also pretty standard stuff, the way they're called. So that's Euclidean, Manhattan, Chebyshev, and Minkowski. You can switch between these two. With this high frequency, maybe it's not gonna be that visible. So I guess let's just lower the maximum level, so for better visibility, And then now, when we switch to Manhattan, let's just increase the scale as well, the distance. Yeah, see pretty much it's a completely different look that you get after switching to the different distant mode, right? This is more cubic with the Manhattan. And this is Chebyshev, and this is Minkowski. Minkowski number as well is super powerful. Like you see how drastically it changes the look of your shapes just by moving the slider. Yeah, I came up with a lot of different cool looking shapes just by moving the slider. So see, super interesting. Okay, so let's go back to Euclidean, and then we have the blend modes, pretty standard stuff. Add, max, min. In here you won't see much of a difference with this type of shape. And then the last one is I really like it myself, the style. So as you can see, at the moment we're on F1, but if you switch to F2, let me just show you. I'm not gonna go through the whole pop-up window here because it's a lot of text here, but you can check it out yourself, guys. But yeah, it's basically method of rendering the data of the 3D Voronoi noise, right? So we have all sorts of subtractions, multiplications, division, and so on between different type of noises, which produces a lot of variety in the shape generation. Well, if I change to the style F2, you see it's completely different look. We can keep on scrolling down. This is a F2 minus F1, F1 multiplied by F2, and so on and so on. So this is produces the cells with the edge, which you can control the thickness of the edge with the slider here, and also random color, kind of like a flat fill type of stuff, you know. So you can change the seed, and each cell will have its own grayscale value. So very interesting. So that pretty much covers it up. A lot of options to play with, as you can see. So just go ahead and explore it. Me myself, I just started playing with all the sliders and just moving up and down, changing the rendering methods, you know, the blends and so on, so on. And I started coming up with a lot of cool looking shapes that I would just save somewhere, and this way I created probably like over 10 different shapes that, you know, I even created some of the portfolio pieces with Voronoi Fractal, which in the next video we will go through each example one by one, and we'll see what's possible with this Voronoi Fractal node. So I'll see you on the next video. Okay guys, so let's move on to our first shape with Voronoi Fractal, which will be something similar to faults or creases that you will see on a piece of paper. What I thought to myself, what the best way to do it will be for me to show you all the values that I entered in here. I would recommend you to use the same values as I do, because even if you entered something close to it, or approximation, or one specific value will not be matching mine, you might get completely different results, because in my experience, Voronoi Fractal can be quite sensitive. Some sliders, you just move them a little bit and completely changes the appearance of the final shape, you know. So I think the best way to approach that will be from, you know, I'll just scroll down to show you everything that I enter here, so you could also pause my video and enter it yourself, so you end up with the same shape. And I also will be providing SBS file on my ArtStation store, so if you want to, you can check it out, and in there you will see all the Voronoi fractals that I used, so you can also copy it from there. So it's gonna be free as well. So at the moment, if we look at it, At the moment, it doesn't look like faults or creases, but we'll take care of it with some warps. But yeah, the idea is to end up with something like that. I'll show you now. Here it is. So this is what I used on my ArtStation portfolio. On this receipt, you see those creases on piece of paper, right? So I used the Voronoi Fractal for that. I'll show you a few examples, which I think I'm quite happy with the way it ended up looking. So let's do something like that. Okay. So take a look at these values over here. Just enter them like mine. Like as I mentioned before, these are just it's a pure coincidence that I ended up with those ones. It's not like I had specifically, it's not like I had something in mind that I said to myself, hey, I'm gonna make some faults today. Not really. I was just messing around, with the sliders, moving them, and then bam, I have like a shape that I think has some potential, and then I take it from there. I start to modify, I start to warp, blend and things like that. I ended up with a shape that I like. So this is how I came up with most of my things. Just as they, like people say, happy accidents. This is exactly what happened. These were just happy accidents in my case. That's why there's no way for me to remember these values. So here you go. Just enter those ones. And once you have it, I'm gonna plug it here. This is what we have, the base shape, right? So when I saw that, I thought to myself, okay, that has some potential. Let's see what we can do. So let's change it up a little bit. Let's see. So what I'm thinking, like for the creases, obviously they tend to be softer on the where you see those lines are running. So let's soften them up. For that, we will just use blur HQ. Okay, let's set the quality to 1. Something small, really. Like 0.3 maybe. Could be good. Okay. Now what we're gonna do is we're gonna offset those lines and create some more complex shape. So what I'll do, I would like to use my one of my favorite nodes, which is non-uniform blur, which is really powerful. So what we'll do, we're gonna invert and put in the blur map. So a lot of the cases, it's used for blurring, blurring your shape based on the input map. But we're not gonna do that in this case. What we're gonna do is we will take the samples and blades to a lower value. Like let's say, I'm gonna take the samples to 1 and blades to 3 or to 2. Okay, and then we're gonna increase the intensity. So let's push it to 50. Why not? Let's see our normal map here as well for the preview. So what happens here, once we decreased our samples and the blades, this node no longer blurs it, but it's sort of offsets your shape, and you can control into which direction it offsets it. Okay, so we can offset it here just by rotating the angle. Okay, like in my case, I'm pretty happy with the way it looks, but as you can see, as soon as I start increasing the blades, it increases the amount, and then with the samples, you start to lose the shape. So keep it to a minimum. And I really like this workflow that I use a lot, just to create some additional complexity to the shape. All right. And you can also mess with anisotropy or asymmetry to give it even more variation. Something like that maybe. And like all of a sudden we have something much more complex than we had before, and it's just one node. So it's pretty magical. It's like if I disable it, right? We go from here to here. I'd say it's pretty impressive. So, okay, we did that. Let's do some cool looking distortions as well. Like say, for example, we can use multi-directional warp. Yep, I like that one as well. It's got you have an option to warp in 4 directions and select different modes. Let's use average, for example. And then for that, we're gonna, let's use crystal node. So it's gonna set something quite low, like 8, and plug it here. Okay, let's get it right. Normal. Okay. So what I want to do, let's zoom in here a bit, see what's happening. So with this warp, once I increase the intensity, as you can see, it starts to warp the shapes in 4 different directions. So it breaks my lines in here. In this spot, for example, I increase that, and you see it creates those broken lines, which I quite like, and gives it more interesting result to the final shape. So we can repeat the same process, but let's say we go for multi-directional warp again. We can reuse the same crystal, just use transformation, and then we could offset it a little bit for some variation. Let it here, and now instead of using the average, let's say we wanna, for example, pick chain. Will give you different result. So with the chain, you see it further breaks the paper here. Let's see. Like you don't need to be. Let me see. Right. So let's see in here. See how it creates those interesting looking creases. Or maybe we don't need to go that crazy, but reduce it to maybe 2.3 intensity. So yeah, this is the idea, that we start to break our shapes. So I see it quite dark at the moment. Let's just let's bring the white value with auto levels. And so the paper is, it's quite plain, so we might as well, we don't want to be that drastic with the grayscale. Let's use histogram range to make it a little bit more flat. It's a piece of paper. Kind of like that. Yeah. All right. Cool. So now, like when I look at this, I see it a little bit too sharp. I noticed some of the paper creases, some of them they look softer, and some of them look sharper. So maybe let's recreate this effect. So what we can do is use a blur again, like before. Use non-uniform blur grayscale. All right, so let's do it like this. And then in here again, we're gonna invert our blur map. I'll put it here, right? So this time we're not gonna decrease samples or blades. We're gonna keep it as it is by default. We're just gonna mess a little bit with the intensity. So make it like, let's make it soft look. And now what we're gonna do is we'll blend a sharp version, which we had before, sharp and soft, to create a cool mix of details. So, for example, we can use a Perlin noise as a mask in here. Let's decrease that maybe to like 12. So in you see in the white spot we'll have a soft looking paper and a black sharp, for example, right? So we do blend. Okay, so we take that on top. Let's move it to the foreground, and the sharp version here we will go in the background. Then we'll just blend it. This mask, all right. So I think it's much more natural looking now in here. So let's see before and after. So before we had everything sharp, and now we have some soft details in some spots, which I like. And like, you know, as a final touch, let's do another warp. This time we could do a directional warp. And with the intensity, we can use the same IMAP. And so it's like a warping, basically it's warping by itself. So with the warp angle, I want to point it down. And I just want to create effect, kind of like a sagging effect, you know, as the paper was pushed down to create some interesting movement, you know. So just do something like that, you know. Let's go down. So yeah, it's more of like a stretch paper effect in that. And yeah, so you can spend even more time doing some creasing and warping and so on. I think I'll just leave it at this point. Let's frame it. We say these are our faults. Okay, we have it here, and then we can go back to our Voronoi Fractal, and then, you know, if we want to change the look, change this look of the creases, we just have to push the random seed, and it's generating different results for us. So yeah, these are the faults. Okay, now let's move to the second example. All right, so now let's see how we can build some sci-fi looking stuff with Voronoi Fractal. So this is what I have here. Let's plug it in and see the result, right? It's kind of reminds me on some sort of circuit board texture, which I really liked. And I even made a material for my art station. I will show you how it looks like. So this is the one. So it's using the Voronoi Fractal out for that. There you go. So I'll show you all the values that I entered here. So take a look. In this case, distance mode is Manhattan. Okay. And now, for instance, if we go to minimum level, we start to change that. You see, we like start to remove the large frame that is on top. Or if we move the max level slider, we start to introduce are higher frequency grid at the bottom of the texture. So the more move, the more busy it becomes, right? So you want to define yourself how you want your material to look like. And then also another cool feature here is lacunarity. So if I move that, see, the shape starts to shift. So you can play with that as well. And also you can use a distance scale in here. You wanna close the distance. You see, like in here, you know, it kind of starts to remind me of those floppy disks or something like that. And yeah, you can go crazy with that. So yeah, it's lots of options to play with. I'm gonna show you one more thing that you can do with that, and that's just to create. You see, there's like golden wires in here, kind of like cables, or I don't know, copper wires, you could say, running in here, right? Can show you how you can do that as well. So basically, what you do is you use a node called it's got a fancy name, reaction diffusion fast. I can never remember the name of it. So let's plug it in here, and yeah, it does some interesting looking patterns. I actually used it in the past for generating corals. It's got this, you know, organic feeling to that this node does. You can play with it, you see, it gets kind of groovy here, but you know, this is not what we really want in our case. So we're gonna keep the radius quite low, like 0.2. And you see what it does is just it creates these lines that run along, which can look like tubes or cables. I know, you know, sci-fi-ish looking stuff. So we can do that, and then obviously we don't want to apply it like everywhere, right? So it's way too noisy. But just on some elements of this shape. So how can we isolate? You know, I say, like, for example, I want it to appear only on the topmost frame. So for that is we have a handy node called histogram select. So with a select, you can actually, if you move position, you start, you know, you can basically choose the layer, pick the whatever layer you want. So I'm gonna, for example, use the one on top, this one. That will become my mask, all right? And let's just blend this guy over here. Blend it on top, and then let's use add and set it like to 0.2, and then we use a mask, and here we go. This is the now we have those copper lines or cables running across. It's just maybe goes more subtle, something like this, you know. Let's look at the normal map. For my liking, it's way too sharp in here, so we don't have like a transition, which if you use tessellation in Designer, that will cause some tearing on the edges, as you can see here, right? I don't think you can completely eliminate that, but to let's say improve the appearance of the edges, you could use a bit of a blur on the edges, so that will smoothen them. Let's use the HQ, set quality to 1, and something quite low will do just fine. Now, like 0.0. 14 maybe. Yeah. Not even like 12. So yeah, we get way smoother bevels now, right? So let's see, before have a lot of tearing, now much better, right? And you have a cleaner normal map with a little bit of a beveling happening, so which is fine. Okay, let's frame that. We call it circuit board, right? Circuit board 01. Okay, here is another version of a sci-fi looking shape with Voronoi. Flat in here. So this one is a bit more flat version, but I really like these shapes as well. So here are the numbers for you. This time it's using Minkowski distance mode. Again, we can play here with minimum and maximum level to change the look. What's interesting about it as well, once you start to increase the minimum level, it starts to introduce like those sort of rocky shapes, which is quite cool. It's like a rock mixed with some sci-fi elements, which I find fascinating. I'm sure you can make a cool looking material out of this as well. And max level, that's to remove medium and small details. Also, you can go crazy with lacunarity here. You see, this is like some sort of cybernetic cracking, whatever you call it, which is really cool. So yeah, this is I actually also use this one on in my material. If you look at the right at the bottom, those parts, the flat aluminum looking parts, this is the one that I'm just showing you right now. Okay, so let's move it here, and that will be our circuit. All right, let's create some rocks now with Voronoi. I think everyone likes creating cliffs and rocky type of surfaces in Designer, so I'm happy to show you that one as well. It's possible. So let's plug it in. All right, so to see it better, let's just use auto level to bring out our shapes. There you go. So that will be our starting point. Okay, here's a normal. And I will show you the numbers. So you can pause my video and enter it yourself. Here we go. So in here again, you can mess with those sliders to change the appearance. I think the key here is to have the style as F1 divided by F2 and have it on Minkowski. For example, I can show you that if I move lacunarity here, when I go down, it starts to remove the smaller rocks, and once I go up, it introduces smaller rocks in the gaps here. So it's pretty awesome. So let's just do let's refine it further, our rocks. I'll show you a few steps that I like to use when creating rocks. So first one will be, let's carve out some shapes, because at the moment our rocks, they're too large. So we can use, for example, transformation to D or safe transform will do as well, just to offset our shape. For example, using here, offset it like that. something like this. We use a blend, and for rocks, min darken mode is great to create those cuts. So let's set it like that. So what it does, it's using the R offset shapes, and then it subtracts basically from our main shape here. So we get more depth and complexity to our rocks. So this is before, and we cut out our large rocks. This is what we have. So I think it looks pretty interesting. All right, so then let's do some warping, because we have like those super straight lines in here. So we would like to make him a little bit more jaggedy, you know. So for that, crystals is great. Use crystal 1. I use it all the time for rocks. So 8 is a good base value. We can do, again, save transform. We can rotate it. And we'll just add it on top of each other to get a bit more complexity. Different scales blended together, just like so. Okay, and then we use directional warp. Here. Okay. And then we can adjust the warp angle here. Use something like that just to, you know, to break up our edges. Like this. Yep. Okay, there we go. Let's do a few more warps. This time we can try non-uniform. So it's just warps it non-uniformly. So let's use it here. Normally you would use some sort of noise, like, you know, clouds or Perlin and intensity and warp angle. But you can also do is just use a simple uniform color. So we do grayscale. You put a white uniform color and you warp it. I think I learned this trick from Mr. Dirk Elshoff, so credit to him for that. So what you do here, you have to go a bit crazy with the intensity to see the effect. So I would do something like 450. I know it sounds extreme, but this is what worked for me personally. And yeah, we can change the angle here. Let's move the trail curve. So what I'm doing now with the trail, if I increase the trail, you see it starts to create like, well, what the name says really. It's creating like a trail to the rock, which is creates like overhang feeling to it. So I find it quite interesting sometimes, just to eliminate some of my like sharp transitions and make it a little bit softer and natural looking, you know. You can do kind of like that, just to create a little bit of overhang. And then you can play with the rotation here. Me personally, I really dig those like diagonal lines that it's creating in our rock shape. I like that. And then also you can mess with the warp angle input multiplier here to generate different looks. Right, so you can mess with that. Then let's do let's do one more warp here. This time we could go for multi-directional. So multi-directional warp grayscale, right? And then let's plug it in. And we could use something like clouds. Always great. I'm gonna blur it a little bit to make it less sharp. Like so. And then I want to inflate it as well a little bit. You can achieve this inflation effect with slow blur. You just plug the same noise, grayscale and slope. And then use the mode blur and use the intensity. It just kind of makes the shapes blobby. Kind of like that. And I'm gonna plug it into multi-directional warp. This is the average mode. This is it's creating like a soft look at the moment, so I'll probably go for max or minimum. Just go for max, yeah, to make it like a bit more rocky feeling. You can also play with directions. Just do one direction or two, and play with the intensity. Yeah, something like that. That gets like a rocky type of surface. Okay, before, this is after. So yeah, I'm gonna call it a day. I'll frame it. This is just a base shape, but you can guys take it from there even further. You know, adding some micro noises, some maybe vegetation, the cracks, and so on and so on. I wanna show you like how to start the base. So rock 1. Then we can always go back and random seed it for different looks. Yeah. All right. So let's move to another version of rocks now. Here is another type of rocky surface. Okay. So check out those values. And blend mode is max and style is F1. I'd say this one resembles more of like a wall made of stones, right? And we can do a few adjustments again to make it even more interesting. And let's use the same technique that I showed you on paper faults with a non-uniform blur. Okay, so the deal was that we would basically drop down the samples and blades to lower values to avoid the blur and to create offset of the same shape. So this is exactly what we're doing. Now we're gonna let's increase that. And then let's move the shape here, a bit like on the side, something more diagonal, like so. Okay. Now we're gonna subtract this shape from our main shape. Again, similar technique. So this will go on the foreground and this will go on the background. So let's do the subtraction this time. Not like this, otherwise it will destroy our stones, but we will just go like half of it. Let's say half is a good value. So as you can see, it starts to create interesting cuts to the stones. Okay, we have we are a little bit, oh shit. By the way, if you get lost like this, Sometimes it just designer goes crazy and you lose your nodes. Press F button, and it will zoom in onto your currently selected node. It's quite useful. Yeah, so let's. I feel like we are losing our full range of motion, so let's use auto level to bring out our shape. Maybe not so much. Let's go for range to get something like more acceptable. Yeah, something like in mid gray. Yeah, that's good. And yeah, in here now, if we go back to non-uniform blur grayscale, let me just use a normal. So yeah, I'm in non-uniform. So if I start to move the angle, see, we can now control where we want our cuts to appear, which is quite cool. So you can like art direct your own work, right? And decide, okay, it allows you for some control. Like, where do I want my cuts to show in this stone? And then if you increase your blades, it just gives you even more cuts if you wish to do so, right? The samples. So yeah, you can play with all these values in here and generate all sorts of looks for your stones. Oh yeah, this is the one I wanted to show you. Let's call it rocks 2. All right, and now let's move on to the next one. Now I'm going to show you a couple of blocky shapes, or geometric, if you will. We plug it in here. So let's use our friend auto level. See better. All right, so we have that. So take a look at my settings here. We have Manhattan and the style is F2. Right, and so with this one we can move max and min level to get different looks. Max, you get more frequencies again added. Lacunarity as well changes the look quite a bit. That so yeah, we can achieve like some sort of futuristic looking wall. And I have another version here, so I'll show you quickly. Here you go, this one. Oh, let me plug it in. It's another type of blocky wall, kind of inversed, but I really like the effect it's producing as well. I think it's pretty cool. And check out the settings here as well. Okay. So we will call it blocky. All right, now let's look at some cracks that you can do with Voronoi Fractal. There you go. I really like those ones. It's got slightly stylized feel to it with a nice looking bevels. And again in here, just moving min and max levels, you can achieve a variety of looks, play with the frequencies and so on, you know. I think it has a lot of potential, this node. And you know, I really hope that by now you start to see like why I really like the Voronoi Fractal node. It's because it's just so many shapes that you can achieve with this node. It's just mind blowing. That's why I'm happy to share with you as well, like so you can start using it yourself. I'll give it a shot. There's another type of oh, by the way, I'm gonna show you all the values I entered here. There you go. style is F1 divided by F2. And in here is another example of different cracks. Yeah, I'll call them like cybernetic looking cracks, you know, mixed with some sci-fi elements, which is quite a unique mix in here. All right, so let's go to this one. If you random seed it, it creates some unique looking shapes here. And here are the values for you. Check it out. All right, so in this example, let's take a look at how we can create organic looking flesh type of surface. So this is what we have, like a cellular surface, which I'll let you have a look at the numbers that I entered here. We are now in Euclidean distance mode with H style, okay? So we're gonna make a few modifications to it with some blurs to make it more organic. And the idea with that will be to have something, I'll show you now, something like that. This is what I created with Voronoi Fractal again. I did some gory monster stuff, and I used it, I used Voronoi to create like this flesh that is inside with, this porous stuff that you see in red. I know it's pretty disgusting to look at, but at the same time beautiful, right? And yeah, let's do something like that. So if we plug it in, by default, it's gonna, as you can see in here, it's going to look like a noisy mess. So we need to take care of that. I'll also advise you to lower the intensity of the normal to around 102. Okay. So first thing first, let's do a bunch of blurs. So we'll start with the simple blur. Let's do HQ. And we're just gonna do it slightly first to get rid of this noisiness. Maybe like 0.25. And now we will use our friend slow blur to do some shape inflation. Okay, so we're gonna use the same shape, grayscale and slope. Let's bump up the number of samples. Blur is fine in this case. We're gonna go quite low in the intensity. So like 0.02 will do just fine. All right, so let's see what we're getting. Let's take a look at our normal map. Here you go. I'm already starting to like the result because it gives us this cool looking blobby shapes, right? With this like tumors or whatever it is. So you see we have before straight lines, and now we get a nice inflation here. Like at the moment I still see it quite noisy for the eye, so let's further reduce the noise. And we'll use non-uniform blur. Let's plug in here. All right. What that will do is we're using the blur map here, so whatever is in white will get blurred first. And in here, since we're actually interested in blurring and not displacing, we can even crank up this these values to get a better quality, something like that. And with intensity, I'll show you how this works with the effect that we're getting. Okay, let's move this one here. Right, so when I start to move the intensity, as you can see, it starts to blur the shapes there on top first. And the more I move, the more it spreads out. So me personally, like, I think I settled in the end on the value of 5, which I think worked for me. It gives you this nice rest areas, you know, in here, which is blurred, and then at the same time produces this like multi-layered pores, right? Because in here we have probably 4 or 5 different layers, as you can see in grayscale, which you can always adjust how you wish, right? With the levels, and then you can change the look of your shapes, right? So yeah, I settle on something like that, right? That's to look a bit like alien. And let's do one more last thing with we could use a vector morph. Why not? Let's use it, and for that we could go with Berlin. Very nice. Off. Right, so it gives us an error because we need to turn into gradient map first before plugging in. All right, here you go. Right, now it went crazy, but that's fine. We're gonna lower it. I'm gonna keep it low, just to give us a little bit of a distortion to the shape. Yeah, something like that, you know. All right. So yeah, so here's our first example. We call it flesh. Okay. Now let's move to the second example of the flesh. All right, so now let's look at our last example. I'm gonna plug it in. Like to see it better, let's go to the normal and let's bump it up to 20 like before. All right, so this is like a sort of like a, I don't know, you can call it the cauliflower slash, I don't know, bumpy, fleshy texture you can produce. And I will show you now the values I have. Take a look. Okay. Let's just do one little thing, slight inflation. I think it will work here. Just a little bit. Yeah, I like that. And yeah, I think it looks quite interesting. What you can do in here as well is to play with the distance scale. If I decrease that, it creates those areas of flatness. Okay, you can do it like this, and also insert some sort of like disease spreading on the walls, right? And we can even blend it with our first flesh shape to see what happens. We use the high blend and like this, the first flesh in the foreground. Let's adjust the offset in here. Something a bit more acceptable. Yeah, like that. Oh, and we have again something unique looking again with that. So yeah, this is our Flesh 02. Here you go. I hope you enjoyed this tutorial and I managed to convince you to use more Voronoi Fractal in your graphs. Thanks a lot for checking out this video, and feel free to follow me on social media, or sometimes I post my game dev breakdowns. And have a great day. Bye!